Just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, a pleasure to be with you this day. What in the world is going on? The overarching question of the hour ahead. We have a foreign policy expert. International affairs are focused. Syria, Brexit, Iran, Iraq, and much more. We'll be joined by William Ogborn. He is from the Decision Lab, and he's got extensive political and foreign affairs background. So if you'll stay put, the Florida Roundtable begins following these messages.
There's something on my mind today that I have to share with you. There are many of you who have never made the decision to follow Jesus. I want you to know that for everyone who has listened to these radio spots, it's been my hope to introduce you to Jesus. Realize that Jesus reaches out to all of us long before we reach out to Him. Could Jesus be speaking to you at this moment? Isn't it time for you to respond? Many of you know a lot about Jesus, yet you've been hesitant to step out in faith and follow Him as your Savior and Lord. I assure you, He's trustworthy. If you've been reluctant to follow Jesus, today could be the day. Christ sees more potential in you than anybody on this earth. You don't want to miss out on your eternal destiny. Whether you're in your car, your office, your home, wherever you are, I encourage you, choose to follow Jesus today. This is Bryant Wright, speaking right from my heart.
Visit rightfromtheheart.org and click Devotions to read the daily devotion and send to a friend.
Have you written a book? You can become a published author with Dorrance Publishing, the nation's oldest publishing services company. Countless authors have trusted Dorrance for nearly 100 years to bring their book to the market. Our professional team will edit your text, design your book pages, and create an appealing, eye-catching custom cover. Plus, our authors benefit from a custom book promotion marketing campaign that makes your book available where people buy books, like Amazon and brick-and-mortar bookstores. So make this free call right now to claim your free author's guide to publishing. Don't wait another day. Take one step closer to realizing your dream of becoming a published author and seeing your name in print. You've already written a book, so the next thing to do is make this free call right now to Dorrance Publishing and get your free guide to publishing. Call right now.
800-485-6003. 800-485-6003. That's 800-485-6003.
This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
I'm Executive Producer Michael Yaffee.
Michael, a pleasure to be with you this day. Something different today. We do this maybe a couple of times a year, focusing on international affairs. What in the world is going on? We are at a point, we've been at a point since the end of World War II when the United States and its president and Congress cannot ignore the world. After World War I,
right.
we tried it, and it didn't do so well. And so we have to pay attention. We are involved in every corner of the globe. And our guest today, William Ogborn, is a specialist in foreign policy. One of the things we need to look at that has created some controversy here at home is what's going on in Syria.
Well, yeah, because President Trump has basically declared victory against ISIS and decided that we need to pull troops out of Syria. And it's been kind of slowed down. Not sure exactly when the end date is going to be, when all the troops are out and what happens next. Do we keep some kind of presence over there? So a lot of open questions, because even though ISIS lost a lot of their land mass, they still have a big presence in that part of the world.
Oh, they absolutely do. And they are not going to go away overnight. So we'll ask William Ogborn about that and what the thinking is and how, is the Trump exit plan going to work? Apparently he's put his foot down and said yes, and was controversial in the way we got in there in the first place. So,
yeah, it's a tough line to walk with American foreign policy, because as you said, it's kind of in our instincts not to get involved too much in the world. We don't really want to. We're not imperialists in America. But after World War II, like you said, and then, of course, after 9/11, it's impossible to ignore what's going on. And we have the strongest military. So what kind of presence should we have around the world? That's a tough question to answer for a lot of people.
Yeah. And sometimes they put it in the terms of, are we the world policeman? Should we be the world's policeman?
I mean, that's really the question. If we are, is that a good thing,
We thought at the end of World War I, and hubris is a word that comes to mind, normally associated with people like Lyndon Johnson, but also the foreign policy of Woodrow Wilson. And one of the things that I noted during the presidency of Bush 43 was that we had not seen a similar foreign policy or that kind of hubris that George W. Bush portrayed since Woodrow Wilson was in office. Almost a missionary-like attitude of making the world safe for democracy.
Yeah, that's really true. That was a big part of the Bush administration. Now, that came after 9/11. In fact, before 9/11, Bush really didn't want to be involved too much around the world, but he changed his mind after those attacks.
Yeah, and it's an ongoing thing today, too, and we forget a lot of things. American memories aren't always that great. What is going on in Iran and Iraq, you say the Shah anymore, and there's a whole generation of people who have no idea what you're talking about.
That's true.
What did the Shah do wrong that caused the revolution in Iran? He wanted Iran to look like California, is what he wanted. He wanted women to have rights and go to school, and of course the radical Islamic segment in the country didn't see it that way and ultimately overthrew him. And is that ever going to change?
And not just in Iran, but other countries in the Middle East. You really bring up a really good problem. That's one of the biggest struggles over there because half of them, they want to modernize, but there's a big part of them that thinks modernization is against their religion.
And there you are. That's the whole thing. And it is a thorny issue. It's not, I do not see it being resolved in the next 20 or 30 years by any means. Can it be resolved? I don't know. But that's, it's a question for future generations. This is not something that's going to go away. But these are the kind of things that we're going to look at over the next hour. William Ogborn has been involved in our government, in the House, and in the State Department for many, many years, and he's got some brilliant things to say. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Michael Yaffee.
And we'll be back in a moment.
Where do you want to go on a vacation or honeymoon? The Caribbean, Europe, Hawaii, Mexico? How about Disney or a cruise? At Superior Cruise and Travel, we've got you covered. We'll assign you your own travel concierge. They'll help you design a custom vacation plan that you can't find online. And the service is completely free. You can't compare the value of this to any other online travel company. We can help you plan a custom vacation anywhere in the world. We even offer payment plans with no credit card required. Now you pay off your vacation on your time schedule. Call now and mention the promo code RADIO and save up to $500. Book your custom trip. Call Superior Cruise and Travel now and talk to one of the highest rated travel agencies in the country with a 5-star A+ online rating.
800-659-5087. 800-659-5087. 800-659-5087. That's 800-659-5087.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Wow, your flowers are gorgeous. What's your secret?
It's no secret. It's Bear Advanced.
You mean these blue bottles?
Uh-huh. I protect my beauties with all-in-one rose and flower care. It's insect and disease control plus fertilizer.
Really? What's this 12-month tree and shrub protect and feed?
Oh, I use it on my trees. It kills bugs for up to a year, plus it feeds. It's that easy. Hey, where are you going?
To get my own. I want a great yard, too.
Bear Advanced. Get more from the Blue Bottle. Always read and follow label instructions.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And Michael, as promised at this point in the program, we are joined by William Ogborn. He is a strategic communications and public diplomacy expert. Quite a track record as a director and strategist of U.S. government entities in the U.S. House of Representatives, the Department of Defense, the State Department, Commerce. My goodness, I could go on and on, but let me say, welcome, welcome, William Ogborn, to the Florida Roundtable, sir.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I started in to do all your biographical notes there, and rather than my sitting here and do that, let me ask you to go ahead and take a minute or so here on the front end of the program and tell us about yourself.
Sure. I've been working with the U.S. government for various entities overseas in Iraq twice, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Libya mission, was in Lebanon, did some work in Syria as well. So really focused a lot on the Middle East and a lot of counter-Russian propaganda fighting and, just trying to make my way through the world and tell people what's really going on. Because, we here in the U.S., we miss a lot of some of the intricacies of what's going on with these in foreign affairs. And a lot of things that we think we know on the first level, there's a lot of second, third, and fourth level effects going on that you don't really realize until you've spent time in that area and seen how some of our enemies operate and what they're really trying to do to thwart us. And I'm here to, hopefully let people know that this isn't just surface level stuff. We have a lot more going on that we don't see.
Okay. Let me ask you this now before we get into it. Tell us a little bit about your educational background and what led you to have this interest in the foreign affairs.
I went to USC, the University of Southern California, and came out. I always wanted to get into politics, and I happened to fall actually into IT the first bit because coming up in the 90s, it was like, well, do you know how to work a computer? Well, yeah. Well, do you know how to build a website? Well, yeah, I took a course on that. Okay, well, you'll just be our IT guy. And that kind of luckily led me to doing a lot more press stuff. And when we went to war in Iraq, I wanted to do my part. So when I went over there, the DOD and then State Department had pegged me as a press and information officer handling their website stuff. And over time, that evolved in doing more public diplomacy, which public diplomacy is the white hat version of how we influence and also get out the message of the United States and how we can be helpful and what we can do for you. And then that led also into doing some of the other stuff, which is a little more subtle in how we try to influence people and getting them to think about issues and ideas that America favors that they might not necessarily be aware of without forcing that in any kind of hard power way.
Mm-hmm. Well, let us start, if I might, let us start with Syria. Controversial entrance into it under Obama, and now some flack about our exit plan under President Trump. But your take, and let's talk about what's going on there.
Okay, well, I mean, the most recent thing that we can really talk about that's going on now, U.S. is still looking at withdrawal. However, we also have the issue of Israel has been bombing Iranian targets, Iranian weapons depots, and transferring of weapons to Hezbollah. So we've had the Russian ambassador come out and flatly tell Israel to stop its arbitrary bombings. Now, arbitrary, of course, is not what's happening. They are very specific, targeted bombings. So what we really saw here was Iran had to tell Russia to put some pressure on Israel to get the U.S. to also put pressure on Israel to stop these bombings. Israel is not going to stop the bombings at this time, but the U.S. is still in the withdrawal phase. It's not going to stop that, even with this kind of newest kerfuffle going on. What we're really seeing in terms of what the U.S. is trying to accomplish, though, with that withdrawal, with dealing with all these other issues that are going on, like with Israel and Russia and Iran, is not leaving any ungoverned territory, because we still have the platforms to strike in the area, even if we withdraw. So when we think about withdrawal, we have 2,000 troops in Hasaka. Most of those are going to be gone. We're still going to have special forces units probably in the area. in Syria, but we're also going to be having a lot of folks around the area that can strike when needed to hit ISIS if they really can reform a command and control aspect, and we can do that within about 4 hours.
So it sounds like that you're not really against the withdrawal.
I'm not against withdrawal at all. I actually support the withdrawal because we can bring to bear the power that we need to, and we can find diplomatic solutions at this point that we do not need to have a full-fledged force in the country, because we cannot adequately explain what the force is going to do. It's the problem we had in Afghanistan and continue to have in Afghanistan. What is our end goal? Well, for 10-plus years in Afghanistan, not a single person in the DOD or State Department or any administration has been able to tell me to my face what our end goal is. And that is a problem, and we should never be utilizing our force unless we know what that end goal is. The end goal in Syria is the wiping out of ISIS. Have we gotten to the point where ISIS no longer has any villages or towns that it can control? Yes. Is it still a problem in terms of splinter cells and small cells that can attack like we saw the past few weeks? Yes. But with no real territory to speak of, we're now in that end game. And it's how can we create this diplomatic solution now with the 7 other countries that are also involved in this war to prevent the ungoverned territories and get some kind of coalition involved, which, everybody hates ISIS. That's one thing that we can agree on. And how does that look going forward so we can start to reposition our strategic assets?
Now, if we are in this end game, where does that leave us? As you say, there are so many countries involved in this thing. The Assad regime having its problems, some people even referring to it as a civil war. Where is that going to leave us in relationship to the Assad regime? Do you see the Assad regime surviving this, and what happens then?
Absolutely, I see them surviving. Assad is very close with Russia. Now, we aren't going to go to war with Russia to get rid of Assad. When we drew the line in the sand under the previous administration saying Assad must go, that was actually a very silly diplomatic statement, because it would be the same as Putin saying Netanyahu must go or Theresa May must go. You don't overthrow one of your main enemy's allies in that sense. You just can't do it. So we know Assad is going to stay. And actually, we need a stronger Assad to prevent another ISIS. And also, a stronger Assad kind of balances the region a little bit, because he's only using Iran right now more as the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But if he's a little bit stronger and can control his territory, that means he has to push back against Iran because he can't have that influence. And that also pushes back against Turkey because of the way that Turkey is now kind of flip-flopping. So it's actually kind of in our interest to allow Assad to remain. Now, does that mean we want to stand for him doing any more human rights violations like gassing his people? Absolutely not. But we've seen that we can do a cruise missile strike and draw that line in the sand. We still have those assets that can go in and hit certain towns or certain areas without having to depose them and without risking a broader war with Russia.
You had mentioned Turkey there, another big player in the region. What does Turkey do after America leaves? Are the Kurds under threat now?
They are certainly under threat, and that has been part of the negotiations so far. One of the crazy things is that under Assad, the Kurds were actually very well protected. They had agreements in place, and in fact, once the U.S. announced a withdrawal, the Kurds went to Assad and got a basic agreement kind of formalized. It hasn't, as far as I know, it still hasn't been signed. But is there ready for Assad to then kind of retake over an alliance with the Kurds to prevent Turkey from gaining too much ground and then also eliminating Syrian Kurds? Now, of course, Iraq also has a very big interest in the Kurds, and Kurdistan, the Kurdistan region of Iraq, is involved as well. So you have a lot of pressure there, and really you want to try to avoid too much open fighting, because Turkey, of course, does see a lot of the Kurds as supporting terrorism, and we do too, because there are elements of it that are terrorist. But, the main Syrian Kurd forces, the Iraqi Kurdish forces, Those are not terrorist organizations. So how do you diplomatically work out with these different factors to convince Turkey it's going to be okay, we can control this, and we're not going to allow you to come in and wholesale slaughter the Kurds?
Now, perhaps not a fair question, but one that I'm sure is in the minds of many of our listeners, and in a side of prediction, I would guess. How long do you see a timetable here, or do you have a feel for how we may be in our end game, but this is going to go on? And is there you have any notion, any kind of prediction of where it's going to go?
Honestly, I think it's going to take a while, and part of that is you've seen that ISIS no longer has command and control capability like it did, but they still have an idea that people are fighting for and people are going to be attracted to. And that is that idea of the caliphate, which is not a new idea. And they aren't the only ones that have it. We've seen Erdogan suggest the same kind of thing, of restarting this Ottoman Empire and the caliphate under them. We're always going to see those elements. So how does Syria play out? Well, you have a lot of open ground. You have a lot of you don't have as many resources, but you have to figure out how to keep those territories under control. And a lot of what we see throughout the Middle East is those tribal relationships. How do they interact? How do they get along with each other? What sets them off to go back to blood grudges? And the U.S. isn't really capable of managing those affairs. So Pompeo's idea of this NATO for the Middle East, or MENO as I call it, since nobody's called it something else, I think would be a really great idea because it can help put pressure on those areas and help assist different countries when they have issues like this, when they have a civil war, kind of just maybe containing it. And the status quo sometimes isn't a bad thing. Sometimes you need that stability. If we were going to side with the civil war in Syria, we should have done it much earlier. Now that time has passed, so now you need to create that stability because it's the instability that creates even more chaos in that region. And that's what I think the Middle East really needs to come together and try to work towards. And we're seeing that a bit with the way Saudi Arabia has reached out.
I tell you what, William, we're going to have to take a pause here along the network line.
Sorry.
That's all. We're doing fine. And we got to remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is William Ogborn. He is a foreign policy expert and specialist. And, boy, he knows an awful lot about a lot of things. Stay put. The conversation continues in a moment.
Want to fly somewhere? Looking for cheap flights or cheap tickets? Then call. That's right. Call the low-cost airline travel hotline now for prices so low we can't publish them anywhere. Low Cost Airlines has all kinds of cheap travel deals. Fly domestically and save up to 75%. You can even fly internationally and save even more. Yes, fly anywhere in the world and save a lot of money on your plane tickets. We'll even save you money with cheap travel deals on hotels, rental cars, even complete travel packages. So don't book your tickets until you call us first for the absolute cheapest prices on U.S. and international airline tickets and hotels. Call right now for prices so low they can't be published. Travel experts are here 24/7 to help. 800-754-4531. 800-754-4531. 800-754-4531. That's 800-754-4531.
Florida's boating environment is always changing. New sunsets, new experiences that you won't find anywhere else on Earth. But one thing that never changes: boating while impaired by drugs or alcohol. It's illegal in the state of Florida. Boating under the influence will land you in jail, or worse, kill someone you love. It's just simply not a risk worth taking. Learn more about Florida's boating laws at myfwc.com. Brought to you by the FWC Division of Law Enforcement.
Your yard's days of being picked on are over, thanks to the science of Bayer Advanced Brush Killer Plus. Its penetrating formula is specifically designed to kill hard-to-control brush like kudzu, poison ivy, poison oak, and wild berries, roots and all. And the concentrate product even kills stumps, so your yard never has to worry about being bullied. Bear Advanced. Get more from the Blue Bottle. BearAdvanced.com. Always read and follow label directions.
Terrorist acts and shootings are often described as great tragedies. They are not. We live in a world so concerned with being politically correct that they're afraid to call evil what it is, evil. Man's sin nature is as old as the Garden of Eden. Many love to blame culture, poverty, or lack of education and opportunity as the problem. They may have a good or bad impact, but the big problem is sin. Acknowledging our sin nature will show us our need for a Savior who changes us from within. That Savior's name is Jesus. He came to die for the sins of all who will acknowledge their sin. Faith in Him strikes a mighty blow at evil. So quit calling man's evil acts a tragedy. They are evil and God hates it. Yet thankfully He loves us in spite of our evil and sin. Jesus not only forgives us, but gives us the want to overcome evil with good. This is Brian Wright, speaking right from my heart.
All right, crew, let's get her dug.
Honey, want to give me a hand? I'm planting that tree, remember?
No matter how large or small your digging project may be, no matter how urban or rural, you must always call 811 before any digging project. 811 is our national one-call number, alerting your local utility companies to come out and mark any lines they have near your dig site. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 business days before any digging project, so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. This includes natural gas and petroleum pipelines, electric, communication cables, and water and sewer lines. So before you do this or this, make sure you do this. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811. Brought to you by Common Ground Alliance.
From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is foreign policy expert William Ogborn, and we are delighted to have him with us. And William, before we continue on here, I wanted to suggest one point here that it has been my feeling over the years, and as we kind of wrap up the notion of what's going on in Syria, is that a part of our problem and understanding what is going on, and you put your finger on it, the caliphate, the Ottoman Empire, and that probably most Americans do not understand the history of that neighborhood and the tribalism that you talked about. And that's a problem when creating our policy, I think.
It very much is. Like, if you look at the Russians and how that they have been approaching the Middle East for the past 60, 70 years plus, when we have dealt with those Russian experts, they live and die and understand those tribal relationships like the back of their hand. It's very difficult to do. When I first arrived in one of my stations in Iraq, they gave me this giant folder notebook. And I mean, I'm talking about something that was at least 6 inches thick of just the tribal relationships there in that region. And I had to try and learn that within about 48 hours before some of my first negotiations. Now, the Russian guys know that because they've been living there their whole life.
Yeah.
We have these folks that are coming in for a year or two. You know, some of the guys can stay longer, and we have contractors that stay longer. But understanding how those relationships work is a key to trying to reach any kind of diplomatic resolve in there. And it's also a key to understanding how we go about kinetic activity in the region, because you have to know, if I'm bombing this, how does it affect these tribes? Do they have relationships? Are they allies? Are they enemies? Are they seeing this as you're helping them get back? Or are they going to be mad because it was their chance to get back at their enemies and you took it away from them? Those have to all be considered when we're dealing with anything in the Middle East. So we need a lot more time, and we need a lot more specialists that have lived and breathed and died that region and that understanding to really be there to help us. Otherwise, we just kind of fumble around and we keep making mistakes. And I think I speak for most Americans when I say that we're tired of fumbling around and making those mistakes, wasting lives, wasting treasure, and not really seeing any gain out of it.
An absolute great point, William. Well, I'd like to shift gears here, and let's take a look at Brexit. Theresa May, it just seems like it gets more complicated with every day that goes by. Your assessment of where that stands at this point?
Well, right now she has put forward her Plan B because her Plan A failed in a catastrophic vote, and she survived the she survived Corbyn's attempt to try and oust her. So now she's presented Plan B, but she's left it open so it's not just an up or down vote. She's trying to get amendments passed for it. Now, when I see that, it makes the position look kind of weak, and I think probably it's going to be so cobbled together, either it's not going to work or it's just going to fall apart. We're approaching that March 29th date where if nothing is done, there's a no deal. And there's a lot of talk within the Conservative Party there. They prefer a no deal over a bad deal, and that they think that Theresa May will stick with the party over sticking with power. So the talk in the backbenches is she's going to, if she can't get a good deal going, if she can't get that extension, she's going to go ahead and go with a no deal.
And what exactly happens if there's no deal?
If there's no deal, then the UK gets treated by the EU under WTO rules. It's going to create a lot of chaos when it really comes to the custom unions issues and with the backdoor Ireland issue, because there is no hard border there between Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland, which the rest of Ireland is staying part of EU. So they'll have to deal with that as quickly as possible. Now, there is a bright side with a hard Brexit. The U.S. has scoped out and had informal talks with Britain, and we will be able to offer a no-barrier trade deal because being part of the custom union creates a lot of problems with the U.S. trying to offer this no-barrier deal because it'll have all these ties with the EU and it'll have a lot of different little strings attached to any kind of real trade agreement. But without that, the U.S. can come in, and I think not only the U.S., but a lot the Five Eyes, we're talking, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, will also be able to come in, offer no-barrier trade deals, and really get the U.K. back up as quickly as possible with a much better deal than they ever got from the EU.
So your notion is that the United Kingdom can do this, and the Commonwealth sort of rides to the rescue here, and they go maybe not necessarily on the same level, but at least securely forward.
Yes, that would be, in my estimation, their best bet. Partially staying part of the EU with a full customs union and other issues like that, they're going to get a bad deal. The EU does not want them to fully succeed outside of the EU because, one, Britain leaving is a huge blow to the EU. And number two, if other countries see that Britain is able to successfully leave and they get a great deal from the number one country in the world, the number one marketplace, suddenly you're going to start to see those other guys, popping out. And they're already very upset with Germany and France, especially after their recent deal, that they're looking to leave if it looks viable. Merkel knows that, Macron knows that, the EU knows that, and they're trying to do everything possible to not only stop Britain from leaving in a clean fashion, but also trying to tie the U.S. up with a lot of little, petty little things to try and keep our distraction away from helping the UK.
I think if you ask the average American citizen, they might not know the history behind all of this. What was the main motivating factor to have the referendum and to leave the EU?
Well, this isn't something new. When Britain joined the European Economic Community in the early 70s, by 75, they already had their first referendum to leave. So there's always been a very big sentiment. And this goes back not just to when the European Economic Community started, but it also, UK has always thought of itself separate from the continent. So there is that nationalistic idea that they are not France, they're not Germany, they're not those people over there. So this is just the newest iteration of that attitude. So it's really not a surprise. It's just that when it came, it's coming at a time when we're seeing a lot of uncertainty in the world over these kind of things. And you're seeing, in the U.S. with the election of Trump, how that played out, and the rural versus urban elites. And then you've seen the same thing now in France itself. You've seen some of it and Hungary and Austria, and it's kind of it shows there's something else going on here. It's not just Brexit. It's not just the U.S. It's not just France. There is a feeling going on, and that's just the latest little symptom of this larger idea.
Now, Brexit happens, and England walks away. A huge, huge blow. Yes, Germany and France are still there, and the smaller countries, but that is a great, great impact on the EU and creates a bunch of problems for them, too.
Absolutely. I mean, they're losing one of the top 5 economies in the world suddenly. So, and not only that, but there has been more talk about how does the EU deal with military, because Trump has kind of signaled the U.S. might not always be there for you. You need to start paying your fair share. So there's been talk in the EU of, like, what do we need to do to create this military? Because NATO is something entirely different. And if they lose the UK, they lose their biggest military power. So then Germany doesn't have much of a military, and France, has a military. It's pretty effective in certain ways, but the rest of the countries don't. So that not only impacts their economy of the EU, that is also going to impact their plans for the future of how that they are going to build this new European society. So that's also what's at play here. It's not just simply, the crazy Britons are going to leave. This is going to really hurt us. This is going to hurt our buying power and our marketplace power and our selling power, and it really hurts our future plans of how to be this giant superstate entity.
I've heard some rumors that there is a possibility of another referendum vote on this. I mean, is that a possibility at all?
It is a possibility. That's certainly what Corbyn and the Labour Party and their allies are working toward, especially the Scottish Party, because they, if you remember, they had a referendum to leave the UK and try to stay with the EU as well. So you have a lot of the Remainers are trying to figure out a way of either ousting Theresa May so that they can just kind of cancel it, or they can call a second referendum, and they're hoping that the vote will turn. Of course, it's one of those things. It's like, I don't know if you remember Batman Returns when they had Tommy Lee Jones's Two-Face. He kept flipping the quarter until he got the answer he wanted. Well, that's not what Two-Face does, and that's not what elections are supposed to do. You're not supposed to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's a good comparison there. William, we're at that point where we have to pause again along our network line and remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable. It's a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day, William Ogborn, a strategic communications and public diplomacy foreign policy expert. We hope you're enjoying the conversation. We'll be back in a moment.
Where do you want to go on a vacation or honeymoon? The Caribbean, Europe, Hawaii, Mexico? How about Disney or a cruise? At Superior Cruise and Travel, we've got you covered. We'll assign you your own travel concierge. They'll help you design a custom vacation plan that you can't find online. And the service is completely free. You can't compare the value of this to any other online travel company. We can help you plan a custom vacation anywhere in the world. We even offer payment plans with no credit card required. Now you pay off your vacation on your time schedule. Call now and mention the promo code RADIO and save up to $500. Book your custom trip. Call Superior Cruise and Travel now and talk to one of the highest-rated travel agencies in the country with a 5-star A+ online rating.
800-659-5087. 800-659-5087. 800-659-5087. That's 800-659-5087.
An opioid overdose does not need to end in tragedy. At-home rescue treatments like naloxone products can help you save the life of a friend or a loved one. Naloxone is available without a prescription and doesn't need to be administered by a health professional. Learn to recognize the signs of an overdose, like unresponsiveness, snoring sounds, and shallow breathing, and be prepared for an emergency by keeping a naloxone product on hand. Find out more at isavefl.com. Brought to you by the Florida Department of Children and Families.
Now you can fly anywhere in the world and pay discount prices on your airline tickets. Book a flight today to London, Paris, Madrid, or anywhere else you want to go and pay a lot less guaranteed. Call the International Travel Department right now at Low Cost Airlines.
800-754-4531. 800-754-4531. That's 800-754-4531.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
Our very special guest this day is foreign policy expert William Ogborn. And William, thank you so much for spending all this time with us today. We know that you are very busy in this. We were talking about, when we went into that last break, about the possibility of another vote on Brexit taking place in England, and I wanted to let you finish up that thought for us.
Sure. I just wanted to say that you can't keep redoing an election to get the results that you want. Now, if Corbyn is successful in getting the referendum through and revoting on it, I think if it's close, even if it remains Brexit, but we're talking like it's 50 point something to 49 point something, he's still going to make the same argument like, oh, well, not enough people voted. They actually don't want this. And he's going to try and hold it up as much as possible. Brexit is going to have to win by at least a 55% or higher margin for Corbyn and the Remainists to be satisfied. Now, if they lose, of course, and that throws everything into chaos, and, you know, it then becomes, I think they'll have to wind up staying, and it will start just kind of going back to the beginning. And it'll be kind of really a disappointment because no matter what, the UK is going to be okay. They're going to survive. But the only way to really start moving forward into getting a lot of those rural sectors that have been destroyed by the EU's regulation, we're talking you can't make cheese and cheddar anymore because the EU said you can't. A lot of these orchards that were thousands of years old, they said your apples aren't good enough. Only Portugal is going to produce those kind of apples. Those industries have a chance, and their only chance is through a Brexit.
All right, I want to shift gears here again and take a look at the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, population small, economy huge, wealth incredible. And it would seem that they're being challenged for leadership politically and economically by the Iranians. The Iranians appear that they want to be the dominant influence and power amongst the countries of the Middle East. Your take on this Iran and Saudi Arabia business?
Well, you're absolutely right. They are fighting over the balance of power. Iraq used to be that center that Iran fought against, and now, unfortunately, Iran has really taken control of large parts of Iraq in terms of influence. So now we do have some influence in Iraq, but not enough to really fight the influence of Iran. So Saudi Arabia is stepping up. And Saudi Arabia is trying to get alliances in order. They've been working a lot with Israel, and they've been actually open about that, which is surprising. They've been working with Jordan. They've been working with the UAE and trying to figure out how do we put a borg against Iran and its desires. And you're seeing that play out a lot in the region. That's a lot what's going on in the war in Yemen.
It seemed like it wasn't that long ago that Iran, and they still are, I guess, they're having really bad economic results from, the Iran deal being canceled and stuff like that. Is that putting pressure on Iran at all to change?
Not really. I think in many ways it galvanizes them because it starts to put look, we're in this together. It's us versus them, which is a classic psychological ploy of really keeping strong support. So they also have other little outlets on the black market for allowing oil to be sold. And we also see that Europe is trying to put pressure on us because they want their deals with Iran going. So they've been playing the game pretty well. Even though we put big sanctions on them, even though they're being punished, they still have enough support to keep going, and they still have enough money and a black market to also keep everything at bay before it blows up in their face.
Now, the U.S. relationship with Iran still pretty rocky. How much, we have a little influence, but where is that and where do you see it going?
I think right now it's just a matter of continuing to put pressures in other ways, shapes, and form on Iran. We're seeing that Turkey is really turning kind of against us now, even though they are still a NATO partner. They did work out a deal with Russia and Iran to sell oil on the black market through their own pipeline so that the Iranians can just ship it up to a Russian or a Turkish pipeline, put it in there, and they'll sell it and they'll send the money back. We're seeing things like that. So we aren't going to be able to ever fully put the pressure on them. It's what we really hope for is for the Iranian people themselves to rise up and say, this is not the kind of country we want. We do not want to go in militarily. Obviously, we have some folks that want to do that, but in talking to the generals in Iraq and in talking to other experts on the ground, that's the last thing we want is to try and in any way, shape, or form invade Iran. We can continue to minimize the damage that Iran can do. We can continue to punish them economically, and we can continue to also do some carrot and stick things to at least keep it at bay. And I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Shifting topics to another really dangerous power in the world that we've been trying to deal with is North Korea. Apparently, there's another summit that's supposed to happen later this year between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. What do you think happens there? And does anything change in North Korea?
I think that the president's attempt to bring North Korea to the fold has been pretty brilliant because he tried to do something different. And that's offer a vision of here's what it can be like if you can just give this up, you can maintain power, and we can start to bring you into the world of nations, first world nations, having this new economy, having this new idea of freedom for your people. And nobody else is offering that. We aren't so naive as to think they are not still trying to make nuclear weapons. They absolutely are. They broke the agreement the first time. They're not the kind of country that abides by the law. So it's a matter of continuing to put pressure, and especially getting the pressure of China, because we knew the entire time those sanctions were going on, the Chinese were not supposed to be putting any money into them. You would see cranes all over North Korea building stuff. They didn't have any money. Where's that money coming from? China. So getting China to work with us, and by putting pressure through the trade route and the trade war, actually gives us more leverage to get China to put pressure on North Korea to make them fulfill this bargain of not getting rid of their nuclear program and actually becoming part of the new economy.
And unfortunately, William, we're at that point of the program where we're going to kind of have to wrap things up. The clock went running away on us. Mike and I could do a couple of more hours with you here. So what we'd like to do is invite you. We'll let a couple of months go by here, and we'd like to invite you to come back and update us on all of these things. Are you involved in any kind of a website or sort of things where people might go to find out more about what you've been saying today?
No, right now I'm currently building my website, so we're waiting for that to come online. That'll be WilliamOgborn.com once it's finally ready. Right. Otherwise, I do have a Twitter handle that I never use because I really do not like Twitter and really wish it would go away.
So, I'm with you.
But you will see more of me coming in the next few months because I'm just trying to get the ideas out there that you're not really seeing talked about in detail in the media. And a lot of these ideas, they percolate in D.C., but the establishment and other entities, they're not interested. It's too hard for Americans, they think, to understand this. Yeah. But once people understand it, they're like, wait, why are we doing things this way? And sometimes there's a good reason, and sometimes the reason is because that's the way they did it, and they just haven't thought of any other new way. And we need to recognize that and be willing to change our tactics sometimes or to understand why we need to maintain the course.
William Ogborn, we will look forward to your next visit here. We wish you well with this, and I think you've got marvelous points there. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Michael Yaffee.
A brief closing thought following these messages.
Want to fly somewhere? Looking for cheap flights or cheap tickets? Then call. That's right. Call the low-cost airline travel hotline now for prices so low we can't publish them anywhere. Low-cost airlines has all kinds of cheap travel deals. Fly domestically and save up to 75%. You can even fly internationally and save even more. Yes, fly anywhere in the world and save a lot of money on your plane tickets. We'll even save you money with cheap travel deals on hotels, rental cars, even complete travel packages. So don't book your tickets until you call us first for the absolute cheapest prices on U.S. and international airline tickets and hotels. Call right now for prices so low they can't be published. Travel experts are here 24/7 to help.
800-754-4531. 800-754-4531. 800-754-4531. That's 800-754-4531.
For Florida families facing the challenge of a loved one with an opioid use disorder, it's important to know that shallow breathing, snoring, or gurgling sounds and unresponsiveness can all be signs of an overdose. In the event of an emergency, an at-home rescue treatment like naloxone can help save a life. Naloxone is available without a prescription and doesn't need to be administered by a health professional. Find out more at isavefl.com. Brought to you by the Florida Department of Children and Families.
Are you tired of high cable TV rates? Sign up for Dish today and get a $500 bonus offer while supplies last. Plus, lock in your price for 2 years guaranteed. Call All-American Dish, your Dish authorized retailer now.
800-405-2561. 800-405-2561. That's 800-405-2561. Offers require credit qualification, 24-month commitment, early termination fee, and e-auto pay. Restrictions apply. Call for details.
In a world of tiny tomatoes and backyard pests, one man and his better half dig deep to save backyard gardens.
Joni, stand by to upload expert videos.
Already loaded, Tom.
Wow, you're good.
You're not so bad yourself.
Tom and Joni McCubbin star in hisandhersgardening.com. Critics rave.
Tom and Joni, they really grow on you. 2 green thumbs up.
Don't miss hisandhersgardening.com.
Employ Florida offers resources and services to help you find employment.
Hi, Gary here. Employ Florida helped me improve my interview skills, plus write a great resume. I attended networking events with many employers and other industry professionals just like me. With the workshops and training found at employflorida.com, I was able to land a great job in my field.
Job resources, real results, hired. Employflorida.com. That's employflorida.com.
We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the surface of Florida's talk and entertainment networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
And, Michael, I enjoyed that vision with our visit with William Ogborn. Put his fingers on a lot of things that most Americans don't think about when they think about foreign policy. He does more than just scratch the surface.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was talking about what was going on in Syria, but mentioned all the different aspects, including Turkey, and Iran and Iraq, and how Iran and Iraq relationship has changed, and lots of stuff.
And when you deal in the Middle East, you have to be aware of the tribal notions.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And they're more than notions. That's where Woodrow Wilson went wrong, and the people that settled the World War I went wrong.
That's a good point.
We are still paying for it all these years later.
Yep.
And I think William Ogborn understands that. Well, we do appreciate your time this day. Too often, Michael and I don't get to say thank you for spending this time with us. We know you have lots of choices out there, and we do appreciate when you stay with us. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Michael Yaffee.
We'll see you next week with another edition of the Florida Roundtable.
You've been listening to the Florida Roundtable, a news and public affairs presentation of the Florida News Network. The views and opinions expressed during this show are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's management, ownership, or sponsors. Please email your comments to reagansmith@fnnonline.net.